Welcome back to Leaders Recon, and in this episode we're going to be discussing federal tuition assistance and credentialing assistance with Mrs. Gauthier. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, I guess before we dive into this, right, we were talking a little bit before the episode, and you had mentioned some interesting facts about yourself related to the military. So you work here as a program manager for federal tuition assistance and credentialing assistance, correct? But you said you haven't actually served in the military, but almost everyone you know has. Um, how has that gone for you? Working at the state level to here, you said this was your 13th move, maybe?
Absolutely. So every male in my family has served, and so it's military's been in our background, as long as I can remember. All my grandparents, my father, my husband, my sons, and so I followed my husband around on his active duty career, and we moved 12 different places during that time. And I started working for Army Education at a couple of the active duty bases that we served. And then in 2012, I was picked up with the National Guard Bureau and was a education services specialist in Kansas. And then we moved to Maine, and then we moved to Wyoming, and I took a promotion to the supervisory ESS.
Oh, wow.
And just last year was able to get the promotion up here at NGB.
So what's been your favorite place that you've
Location?
lived?
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness. Germany, definitely.
Oh,
We
really?
were
Okay.
stationed there for 4 years. It was a little sad because my husband was in Iraq 2 out of the 4 years, so that part was not great, but we went to 12 different countries
Oh,
during
wow.
the 2 years that he was home.
Just got to see a little bit of Europe
bit.
and do that. Oh, that's
Yeah.
kind of nice. So I guess if we dive into this federal tuition assistance, first, can you just tell me, like, what is that?
Yeah. So federal tuition assistance is a voluntary off-duty program for soldiers to pursue their education,
Okay.
meaning to work on either their associate's degree, their bachelor's degree, or their master's degree using Army funds to help pay for their tuition.
Okay, and is it only through like certain universities or programs, or how does that get?
Yeah, so we have a brand new website, an upgraded Army Ignited website, and in that website, schools do have to be DoD MOU signers, meaning that they agree to some of the rules and regulations of accepting the Army's money, the military's money in general. And once they sign that, then they can onboard in Army Ignited, but soldiers can only attend schools that have gone through those processes. So it's not every school out there, but there's about 2,400 schools.
Oh, wow. So it's not like you're super limited.
Right, absolutely.
What's so like, does it matter? So if I'm like trying to maybe explore something on my own with this tuition assistance, does it matter which what program I want to study or anything, or how does that work?
So, of course, there are some rules and stipulations. One is that soldiers can only pursue a degree of a higher level than they already possess. So, for example, a newer soldier or a high school graduate has both associates and bachelors open up to them, whereas a lot of our officers who already have their bachelors, or even enlisted soldiers that come in with their associates or bachelors already, have to be working up to that next level. And so, but program-wise, generally no. As long as the school offers it, we're not going to tell you you have to get a degree in something in particular. We're just going to limit what level you can pursue.
Okay, so has to be one level higher at least.
Correct.
Now, so we've had some other episodes where we've talked about like the GI Bill, some different pieces of that. How is FTA different from these other programs?
So one of the big things is that this is tuition only. That's why it's federal tuition assistance. So we're only going to cover the cost up to $250 per credit of whatever a school might charge.
Okay.
So you do have to be careful when you're shopping around for schools. There are some schools that obviously have very expensive tuition, and so if you attend a school that's over the $250 a credit that we're going to help you pay, then you're going to have a lot of out-of-pocket expense. So, we do recommend that soldiers do a little bit of research and look into schools so that they know, what out-of-pocket expense might I incur also while using it. But we don't limit. You can use your 1606 GI Bill or any other GI Bill you might have already earned, while using tuition assistance too.
So it is stackable. What about, so we're getting ready to talk about credentialing assistance in another little episode. But when related to FTA, though, I use federal tuition assistance combined with credentialing
Yes,
assistance?
you
Okay.
can. So it's the same pot of money. So that's where the problem exists, is that you're given $4,000 to pursue both federal tuition assistance and credentialing
Okay.
assistance. So if you are taking, up to 16 credits using federal tuition assistance and your school charges the $250 per credit that we'll pay for, you've maxed out your $4,000. So
Okay.
that wouldn't leave any money left over for credentialing. But if you chose to do, say, a credential for $1,000, well, then you would still have $3,000 to take some courses.
And that's every year, though,
And
right?
that's every fiscal year.
Okay.
Yep, so
And
it
so
refreshes every 1 October.
what are the minimum requirements again? I guess that's what
Yeah.
I really want to know. I'm
Absolutely.
like, okay, how do I get the money?
And we have some really exciting news when it comes to that. And
Okay.
that is that it used to be you had to complete AIT or Bullock or warrant officer basic course to be eligible for FTA. And all of that has gone away.
Oh, wow.
You don't even have to complete basic training anymore. So this was just put into policy last month. So this
Okay.
is brand new. Most soldiers don't know about this
So
yet.
they're hearing it here first.
So you are hearing
Breaking
it here
news,
first.
guys.
Absolutely. And so all they have to have is a CAT card. So
Okay.
if you've got a delayed entry, service member who unit was able to issue them a CAT card, but they haven't gone to basic training or AIT, they're now eligible for federal tuition assistance.
Oh, wow.
So that's really exciting. And same with officers and warrant officers too. And so the eligibility is pretty slim now. You have to have a CAT card and you can't be flagged. So you can't be flagged for height, weight, PT failure
Any
or
adverse-
adverse
yeah,
action.
okay.
And so other than that, you're eligible for the program.
And are there any requirements that you incur if you use the program? So, like, let's say I use my $4,000. Like, do I incur a service obligation, or what? How does that work?
So for enlisted, no. So for enlisted, the only service requirement is to complete the course while you're still on duty. So you can't have a course that ends after your ETS date or your separation date. For officers, though, they do incur a service obligation.
Always the
We
officers.
always get those officers. And so, but it's two different ones. If it is an activated officer, meaning, an AGR or Title 10 officer, they accrue a 2-year ADSO from the last day of the last class that they use their tuition assistance for. If it's an M-Day officer, then they accrue a 4-year RADSO, reserve duty service obligation, to use tuition assistance. Now, it is prorated. So if you serve some of that amount of time and then you still decide to separate early, you're not going to have to pay the whole course back. You would only have to pay, whatever portion of that service obligation you didn't.
So, like, let's go through a hypothetical example. So, like, let's say I'm getting my master's, right? And I'm using federal tuition assistance, and I do it. It's extended program. So every year I use my $4,000. So I have 4,000, 4,000, 4,000. Now I owe 4 years after that last.
So no, well, one,
Year,
are you an M-Day or are you
Just a traditional guardsman.
traditional
Yeah,
guardsman?
just a traditional.
So if you're doing it every year, so after that first year, your time is already ticking for those first year classes. So it's
Okay.
4 years from the last day of the class, not when you complete the whole program. So it's just from the last day of that class. So if you stay in for 4 years and that first class that you had taken is already completed that ADSO. So it's not
Okay.
4 years from the last day of all the classes, it's from each day.
Okay. So it's like a rolling effect
It
then,
is.
right?
It is.
So, like, if I got out the next year, let's say, then
Yes.
I would owe 3/4 of the previous year, half of the year before that. Okay. That's good to know. So speaking of like repayments, if you get out of the military, you owe some of the money back. Now, what happens if I don't pass one of the courses? Do I still get to keep the money? How does that work?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are a couple kind of rules and regulations.
Okay.
There is a minimum GPA requirement that soldiers do have to maintain to be
What
able
is that?
And so it's a 2.0 for an undergraduate. So, that's
So the whole C's get degrees thing?
absolutely.
Okay.
But for master's level, it is a 3.0.
Okay.
So they don't have the C's get
Yeah,
degrees
yeah.
option. So there's a minimum GPA, otherwise your account goes on hold and you cannot request you cannot request tuition assistance any longer. And then, of course, there's the fact that if you fail a course or you withdraw from a course after the course has already started, and the school is charging you for a portion or all of the course, then you will have to pay that back to the Army, because the Army is paying for you to successfully pass your classes. So if you fail to do that, then we are going to recoup that money, unfortunately.
So if I have one class that I end up I fail out of, biochem or whatever, right, and I have to retake it, then those credit hours for biochem I have to repay, not all of my tuition.
Correct. Yeah, okay. It's just for that one course. So if you're taking 5 courses and you fail one, then you're just responsible for being recouped on that one course that you fail.
Okay.
And recoupment can be a process. It's not a lump sum payment. It can be taken out of drill pays each month, so it's not, try to make it as least hardship as we can for the soldier. And then the only other stipulation with that is once you have paid back a course, we would pay for you to take it again. So if it's a requirement for your degree, once you pay back something that you failed, then we can pay for it again. Where if you technically pass a class, with a C, but your program says you need a B in it, we're not going to pay for you to take it again if we've already paid successfully once.
So if you fail a class, pay it back, you can get it paid for again. Yes. You pass the class, but you just don't pass it well enough, you're just out of luck.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So what are some of the program, or I guess as a program manager, I'm sure you see a lot of this, what are some of the hiccups that soldiers run into when they're trying to use federal tuition assistance, and what does that application process look like?
So we just switched to a brand new web portal system.
Okay.
And so unfortunately, they're both called Army Ignited. And so soldiers don't quite know, we moved from the first Army Ignited to the upgraded Army Ignited. So that's been a little confusing for a lot of soldiers. But we have just moved to a brand new system that we are really hoping is going to be a cut above what we've been dealing with for the last 2 years. For the last 2 years, our system was really bad. And unfortunately, a lot of soldiers struggled and a lot of schools struggled to be able to submit their TA requests and for the schools to get paid. So the Army has rectified that, and we've moved to a brand new web system, though, that has already been previously proven successful with the Air Force. So it's the same system that the Air Force uses now with Army branding, for us to use, but it's already proven to be successful to pay the schools and for the airmen to do their stuff. And now the Army is brought into this, and so we're already seeing that a lot of the hiccups from the last 2 years in the previous system are being rectified, and soldiers are really liking this new system. It's a lot more user friendly. Schools are so happy that we're going to a system and a program that they're already familiar with. And so we're really hoping that due to these new changes that soldiers aren't going to have the problems that they've been having in the past. But that also means that the blanket ETP we've had in place for the last 2 years is now no longer in effect. And so soldiers have to get used to relearning, and reprogramming how they apply for tuition assistance, because now everything has to be done 7 days prior to the start date of any classes.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be my next question. How does that work? So if I can't get approved for tuition assistance and then apply for schools, I have to be accepted, everything, and then just put in the application.
Yeah, so we definitely ask the soldiers to do some research. The first thing we want to do is get them connected with their education services office.
Okay.
Every state, all 54 states and territories, have their own education services office, where there is an education services officer and an education services specialist that's employed by NGB. We have 27 of them out in the states, but most of those they cover multiple states in their areas. We want them to connect with their counselor first, because the counselor is going to talk to them about what is it that you want to do, and what kind of school are you looking for? Is federal tuition assistance or credentialing better for you? What are our state TA programs? There's a lot of other benefits that the education office, has, that they need to do some counseling first to figure out what benefits are the best for you.
Well, that's kind of what we talked about in one of the previous episodes, just the importance of kind of having that personal outlook on your situation, you know?
Absolutely. And so, but once they do decide, hey, I want this degree and I want to go to this school, then of course we're going to encourage them to apply directly to the school. We tell the soldiers reach out to the Veterans Affairs office though, because sometimes admissions offices, may not know that you're a veteran or a soldier, and they might have some special, like no application fee or, some special perks, for being a service member. And so, reach out to the Veteran Service Office, apply to the school, get accepted, and then pick your classes. Once they're registered for classes, that's when they're going to come back to Army Ignited and actually get registered. And they can register 7 days prior, up to 60 days prior for start dates. But everything has to be approved in the Army Ignited system 7 days prior to the start date.
7 days prior to the start date. Okay.
Yes.
So speaking of the new system, I heard there was maybe some other pieces of good news that came with this migration to the new system.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things that a lot of soldiers were struggling with or had issues with in the old system kind of came over as a clean slate into the new program. So for example, for soldiers that had used so many credits before, now in the new system, it's a clean slate where it says that they have not used any of their 130 undergraduate hours that they're allowed or their 39 hours of graduate credits that they have used. And so it kind of starts over. Now, it doesn't mean obviously if you got a master's that you can go and get a second master's or anything using those 39 credits, because again, you can't do a degree that's at the same level as you've already gotten. But if you, were at 9 hours and you had a 45-hour course, or a degree, then you still have those extra credits to be able to pursue. And then the other one is GPAs. For any soldiers that were on GPA holds in the old system, again, you get to come over as a clean slate and start fresh in this new program. So that hold is no longer affecting those soldiers' accounts anymore.
So speaking of that, because I kind of wanted to work through those requirements, because we kind of briefly touched on it, but you just mentioned, so for undergraduate, you said 130 hours, credit hours worth of
undergraduate work.
Okay, for federal tuition assistance, which obviously would have to be spread out over many years.
Right, because again, we pay $250 per credit, but we only will cover 16 credits per fiscal year.
Okay.
So soldiers that are attending full-time, they're usually going to run out of their credits pretty quick. Sometimes that's only one semester worth of
it's
of
about
college
is
that
one
cover.
semester,
right? And so, and that's true for our traditional M days, that are going full time. It works a lot better for a lot of our active, folks who might maybe only taking 1 or 2 classes at a time versus the full load.
Okay, and then you said 39 credit hours for any graduate programs, or just
only at the master's level. We don't go any higher than that, so we cannot pay for any doctoral level degrees or professional level degrees.
But is like a law degree considered a professional degree? Okay, so that's good to know. So only masters or undergraduate degrees.
Right.
Okay.
In the old system, we were allowing academic certificates. We were allowing undergraduate and graduate academic certificates. Right now, that is on hold only because the new system doesn't have that functionality built yet. So they are looking to have this built sometime by next spring, April, May timeframe. So we are hoping to bring back academic certificates for 21 credit hours each year. But right now, that's currently on hold.
So what about some of the trade schools, like those tech schools and stuff where, I'm becoming, certified as an electrician or whatever, right? And there's a program associated with that. Is that covered, or how does that work?
So right now, again, it depends on how those programs are set up at a school. Federal tuition assistance has to be accredited credit-bearing programs at academic institutions. So it has to be for credit. We're going to talk, on the next episode about credentialing assistance, which is where a lot of the trade programs can be picked up when you just need credentialed or licensed to be one of those jobs. But if you are looking for a, certified program through an educational institution, again, for credit, then right now, again, it has to be under an associate's program for it, because we're not even covering certificates right now. And so, there is some limbo with some of the trades right now, but we do have the credentialing assistance, which will pick up, some of those that we'll talk about the next time.
Yeah, so you just have to tune into the next episode. The beginning of the episode, you were saying you can kind of use federal tuition assistance in coordination with like the GI Bill and some of those other programs that you qualify for. Can you list out like some of those programs that you might be able to stack alongside of this if a person's trying to put together like, how do I pay for my
Yeah,
school?
absolutely. Because really what we want to try to avoid is we want to try to avoid debt at all, if at all possible. We don't want any soldiers taking out loans if they don't have to, because they've got multiple benefits that we want soldiers to take advantage of. So one, yes, their 1606 GI Bill can stack and they can use it at the same time as long as they are going more than half time.
Okay.
So their school will determine what half time and more than half time is, and more than half time usually just means 1 credit, beyond what they consider half time.
Okay.
So if they are going more than half time, they can draw their full 1606 GI Bill. So that's, currently,
Yeah.
quite a bit of money, 400 and something, I believe, per month. And so they can draw that while using their federal tuition assistance. For many soldiers who may have the post 9/11 GI Bill, for our activated soldiers, it's not always the bang for the buck for our activated soldiers to use their post 9/11 GI Bill, because they won't receive the housing stipend that comes with it because they're getting BAH. So that is one area that we want them to talk to a counselor first before deciding to use a GI Bill benefit, because it might not be the bang for their buck if they could give it to their spouse or to their child, or use it once they're out of service to get more money for that GI Bill program. A lot of our states have state TA programs too. And so sometimes it's stackable, sometimes it's not. Depends on what the state TA will pay for, because some of those will pay for fees, though. And a lot of schools charge fees. And again, our tuition only program is only covering tuition. So for some states, they can go ahead and dip into that to get all those
really
fees
good to
paid
know,
for.
honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, I think it comes down to the basic thing, from what I understand anyway, is like learn enough to get your feet wet and then go talk to your education counselor.
Yeah.
What would be your advice? So like, I'm a soldier, I'm trying to get some of the information, you have, I know a little bit about federal tuition assistance. Maybe I have a GI Bill, maybe I don't qualify, you know what I mean? Like what are some pieces of advice you would give them when kind of going through this research process that you mentioned and kind of figuring out, what the next steps are?
Right. So, I mean, one of the first things that I would recommend to all soldiers is, if you joined for education benefits, which the Jammers report shows that new recruits, the number one reason is always education benefits, use them. Don't leave them on the table. I mean, that's step number one. Is if you said that you came in for educational benefits, don't leave them sitting on the table. Kind of figure out. Counselors can help you figure out what are you good at. We can do interest inventories with soldiers. We can help them figure out what would be a good path for you to take. So, there are a lot of soldiers out there still saying, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but we have ways to help you kind of figure out that path. And so we definitely want soldiers to take advantage of all these benefits that we provide, because this is why a lot of them said they joined. And so don't leave free money sitting on the table when you could be doing something to better your military side, because these are promotion points. So it can help soldiers get promoted faster. And then two, it can help you get a better job on the civilian side.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Well, thank you for giving some good information here. I learned a lot about federal tuition assistance. Hopefully everyone else did as well.
Yeah.
If you would like more information on any of the topics discussed today, please visit our social media pages in the links below. Tune in to Leaders Recon over the next few weeks as we bring in today's leaders and pioneers to discuss their experiences, share their wisdom, and help you grow as a leader. If you like this episode of Leaders Recon, please don't forget to subscribe below and leave us a 5-star review. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.